Welcome back. Hopefully you took the time to place the statements. How was this activity? Many students feel that it is much harder than it seems. Oftentimes students make great progress placing the statements, but then find a new statement that seems to belong in a space where another statement has already been placed. Or they have their board mostly filled and then get near the end with a few statements that don't fit into the remaining spaces. Don't be discouraged if this was your experience. This activity is meant to give you a quick overview of development through the lifespan and across the domains, but we'll spend the rest of the semester talking about development in much greater detail. Also remember that development is often not cut and dry. Humans are very complex, and so is development. After we review the suggested answers, we'll discuss a few of the reasons that make this activity harder than it may appear. Get your completed boards ready and check your answers as we review the statements. We'll start at the top with the prenatal period. As we've already discussed, the cell corresponding with physical development domain should contain the statement, physical growth is the most rapid of the lifespan. During this time, the new life goes from being a single-celled organism to a multi-trillion-celled autonomous being. Moving to cognitive development cell, we place the statement, research indicates that recognition of such items as a story may begin. As amazing as this seems, fetuses and newborns respond differently to familiar and unfamiliar stories, though they don't truly understand the words yet. Finally, under emotional and social development, we place recognition of significant voices such as mother is evident. Students often want to place this statement under the cognitive domain. While it's true that there is a cognitive component to this statement, we've already placed a statement in that cell. Plus, the statement is the precursor to attachment, which is an important development in the emotional and social domain. Now to infancy and toddlerhood. In the physical development domain, you should have the statement that the brain reaches more than 2/3 of its adult size. The brain is actually the structure of the human body that is closest to its final size at birth and continues to grow at a rapid rate over the first years. For cognitive development, you should have comprehension and use of language develop rapidly. A baby comes into the world only able to communicate with cries. By 2 years, most children can use simple sentences. Finally, in terms of emotional and social development, you should have attachment to parents and others form. We'll discuss attachment in much more detail later in the semester. Moving to early childhood, we start with the physical development with the fact that appearance becomes more slender and proportions become more adult-like. Certainly our 2 to 6-year-olds still look like children, but as they start walking, they tend to lean out. Plus, their proportions change as they effectively grow to catch up with those big heads that they were born with. In terms of cognitive development, immaturity of thought leads to some illogical ideas about the world. As Piaget describes, children are in the pre-operational stage where they don't yet use operations or actions that obey logical rules. For emotional and social development, students are often surprised to learn that gender identity develops. Students often think that gender identity fits into the physical domain. Again, there is a physical component, but gender identity is not synonymous with biological sex. Rather, it is a complex social construct that describes how individuals see themselves as relatively masculine or feminine in characteristics. In middle childhood and physical development, we find that growth slows. Children are now growing an average of about 1 to 2 inches and gaining around 5 pounds per year. This is drastically less than the doubling, tripling, and quadrupling of weight that is common in infancy and toddlerhood. In terms of cognitive development, children begin to use operations to guide their thinking. This means that children begin to think logically but concretely. Hence, Piaget refers to this as the concrete operational stage. As children begin to think less egocentrically and as they begin to spend more time with peers, particularly with the onset of school, peers become increasingly important. This falls into the emotional and social domain. Many students expect this statement to apply best to adolescents, since we so often hear about the importance of peers to teens. Certainly peers are important in adolescence, but they really take on a new importance for kids starting in middle childhood. In terms of physical development in adolescent period, a very notable hallmark is that reproductive maturity arrives. However, in terms of cognitive development, we find that immature thinking persists in some attitudes and behaviors. In the adolescent module, we'll learn about the imaginary audience and personal fable, two common examples of this immature thinking, which are actually due to increasing cognitive abilities. In terms of emotional and social development, Erikson highlights the important task of defining oneself separately from families and others. Hence, the search for identity becomes central. Now we move to the adult years. Early adulthood is the peak for many areas of development, including physical development, where athletic skills peak then decline. In the other domains, the focus typically shift to career and relationships. In terms of cognitive development, the statement narrows vocational options and settles into specific career is common for this age. In terms of emotional and social development, young adults may cohabitate, marry, and bear children. Middle adulthood tends to be more of a mixed bag in terms of improvements and declines. In terms of physical development, vision often declines. This is when reading glasses and progressives or bifocal lenses become common. Cognitive development includes improvements and declines as there are decreases in processing speed and working memory and increases in knowledge and problem solving. While middle-aged adults aren't quite as quick, they have a larger base of experience to draw upon. In terms of emotional and social development, Erikson provides us with the term generativity. This explains a pattern where desire to give to and guide the next generation intensifies. Finally, we reach late adulthood. The ages of 65 till death typically involve overall decline. In physical development, we see an overall decline in physical abilities. In cognitive development, we see overall decline in memory abilities with increased use of external aids. And with emotional and social development, older adults must come to terms with life and death. As seen on this slide, there are many reasons why placing a statement about development into a given age period isn't always straightforward. First of all, the age periods overlap. For example, the period of early childhood is 2 to 6, while the period of middle childhood is 6 to 11. Second of all, people develop at their own rate, meaning that there are individual differences in development. Also, the statements reflect generalizations of development, and actual specific development may vary. As stated in earlier videos, development is complex and influenced by many factors. Finally, development in one age period can affect development in later age periods. While we talk about the three domains as if they are separate, they are really actually intersecting. As discussed in an earlier video, this can lead to the domains overlapping and creating multidirectional influences. As discussed in this activity, the statement, recognition of significant voices such as mother is evident, includes features of both cognitive and emotional and social development. Similarly, if a child has a lot of ear infections when they are young, this can impair their cognitive development. This is an intersection of the physical and cognitive domains. Now think about your own life. If you're sick, if you're not feeling well, does this cause you to be more sensitive in your interactions with others? This is an intersection between the physical and emotional and social domains. And personally, I know this is true for me. I hope this activity was useful, and I look forward to talking and learning more about human development as we continue through this semester.